Thanks, Cesar, for having me. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how you can use customer journeys to break down silos in large organizations. A little bit about me. I've been working in the financial sector with customer experience and customer journeys for, the last decade. Wow, that makes me feel old. But basically, I started out in Danskebank, working for quite some years in a number of different roles, primarily focusing around customer experience and customer journeys. Then I had a brief stint in a pension company, and now I'm working in Nordea, driving their customer journey transformation in the business banking part of the organization there. A little bit about Nordea. For those of you who don't know, we're the biggest bank across the Nordics. So our main markets are Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. We service everything from students to pensioners in the personal segment, small local businesses up to large international corporates in the business and large corporate segments. And what that means is basically complex service models, different service models across the business, lots of different products. In general, just lots and lots of complexity. And that sort of leads me to the first part, which is I started wondering, why is it actually that these large organizations need to work with their customer journey? How do we get to this point where the customer experience starts being so bad that we actually need someone to go out and talk to the customers to even understand what's going on? And I tried to sort of figure out a way to how do I visualize that? How do we show why it actually gets to the point that it gets? And the only example I could come up with is when big cities build out their metro systems. And I know that sounds super weird, but bear with me a little bit here. So basically, when you start a company, you start out with an idea. Usually it's pretty simple. Maybe it could be, we have 3 products, we sell it all on the same channel. Super easy, everyone can create an overview over that, right? Then someone comes along with a good idea. How about we build something for business? I heard B2B, that's where all the money is, right? Okay, then we add that. Business leg still pretty manageable, we can do that, right? Then another idea pops up. Maybe an extra service, maybe an extra product, and you start building on. At one point, there's probably someone that's going to show up from the process department and be like, it would be a lot more efficient if we have this department in the middle that handle all the manual stuff, right? A lot more efficient. Yeah, I guess we like efficiency, so we built that in. And then, another good idea and another good idea, and eventually you wind up with something that looks something like this, right? A lot of different departments and processes and products and channels and services, and people start to lose sight of it all. And worst of all, no one really has the overview of what the customers are experiencing, because it sort of makes sense from us inside, right? You just need to go follow the purple line and then jump onto the next one. But that's not what it looks like for the customer. And also for the employees that are actually working, trying to serve the customers, it gets a little complex. And usually what that leads to is something that all of us that work with customer journeys are super scared of. Silo thinking, right? Whenever complexity grows too big, people, and it's a completely normal reaction, they tend to shut themselves in. They focus on the small thing that they can control, the small thing that they have ownership over. Their little KPI, if I just deliver on this, then I'm a success. And then someone else has to deal with whatever happens down the line, right? And that's when we need the customer journeys to come and help us understand what's going on and to help connect people across the silos. But in order to actually succeed with that, at least in my experiences, there's a couple of phases that we need to go through to actually succeed. I've identified 3 phases. There might be more, but these are the ones I've been through at least. The first one I've called the experiment. So usually that's where we start. We start out trying it out, right? Someone in the organization gets the great idea. Maybe they're on a conference like this one. So say, hey, we should maybe map our customer journeys. So that's what happened, for example, in Danskebank. Lucky for me, it was our CEO at the time that was at a conference, heard about this customer journey, so thought, oh, that sounded cool. Maybe we should try that out. And then it landed in my department, which was the process department, because processes and journeys, that's sort of the same thing, right? So we tried that out. In Nordea, it was a little bit different. It was further down in the organization that someone got the good idea, we should work with our customer journeys. So coming in there was a bit more legwork. We had to then convince top management in Danskebank. They were just on board from the beginning, right? And in Nordea, we had to convince them a little bit why this is a good idea. Showing them all the disjointed journeys and what the consequences actually were from this. We showed them the complaints of customers that were falling in between departments. That sort of helped. Then we showed them the loss of conversion throughout the journey. So actually we were leaving money on the table because customers were dropping off in some of our key journeys. That really got them interested. When it's money, then they're all in, right? But either way, we got the go-ahead. And then we thought to ourselves, okay, how do we get started? Which journey should we actually start with? So we went around, talked to the organization, and already there I ran into sort of an issue. When I was talking about customer journeys, people were nodding and saying, yes, we should do it, but really they were actually talking about different things depending on who I was talking to. So when I was talking to marketing, for example, they said, yes, let's map the customer journey. And I'm like, no, there's more. No, there's only one customer journey. It's the customer life cycle, right? We need to attract them, then we need to convert them, and then we need to retain them. That's the journey. That's all we need. Then when I went to talk to IT, they said, don't worry about it. We already mapped the journeys. You don't even need to do it. I thought, great, can we see them? And what they were talking about were more like user journeys or even user flows. Like we have all the screens and the customer presses this button and then they go here. That's the journey, right? So we had to sort of come up with a joint language. What do we actually mean when we're talking about customer journeys in the organization? And we landed somewhere in the middle. So, a journey that's not too high flying, but also not too detailed. It needs to be concrete enough that we actually solve the customer's problem. So from they have a need until they actually have that need fulfilled, but also not too detailed that we don't solve the whole thing, but only take part of it and start sub-optimizing. Okay, now we at least know what we're looking at, but then we need to figure out which one do we actually start with. We did something really low practical. We just sat down and said, okay, what are the top 5 customer journeys in our area that we just need to deliver on? What's our bread and butter as a bank? If customers can't get a home loan, for example, with us, then we failed, right? So let's put just the top 5 that we just have to deliver on. And then let's ask ourselves which one is the most critical at the moment. Where are we getting the most complaints? Which ones do we not have a full overview over? And for some reason, both when I started in Danskebank and now also in Nordea, it turned out that onboarding, apparently no one owns onboarding. I don't know about your businesses, but apparently onboarding is always a mess. So that's where I've started every time. And then it was basically just, get going, the process out, map the journey, talk to customers. And when you're doing this for the first time in a big organization, you're gonna find a big mess. At least that's what I've experienced so far. So many things to fix. Absolutely, looks absolutely terrible from the customer's point of view. Of course, we did what all good service designers do, right? We printed out a large, nice poster, and then we went around starting to knock on doors and telling the story of the customer. And everyone we talked to was like, yeah, no, that's not okay. We can't live with that. Terrible experience for the customer. We need to do something about that. But, and there's always a but, right? No one really wanted to take responsibility. So, parts of the organization could take in some of the feedback, but no one really wanted to take responsibility for the whole thing. Again, we went around, we talked to marketing and said, the website's not really working, we need to fix that. And marketing said, yeah, but there's 4 other projects that we need to do before that's more important. We went to Frontline and said, this interaction's not really working. And they said, we can take some of that feedback, but we really need a new IT system before we can really make a difference. So we went to IT and said, we need a new IT system. And IT said, yeah, good luck with that. We're fully booked in the budget for the next 2 years. So we sort of just kept going in circles, everyone pointing at each other. Everyone agrees there's a problem, but no one really wants to take responsibility to solve it. And this is where we get to the really hard part, right? You know what needs to be done, but no one wants to do it. So what do? This is also usually where a lot of customer journey initiatives go to die, right? You have your fancy posters and they end up sort of just being really expensive wallpaper hanging there in the office, almost taunting you. So what we did in Danske to say, okay, we can't live with that, as I said it about, we need to basically anchor it somewhere in the organization. In order for this to actually succeed, someone needs to work with this full time and drive it going forward. It can't just live with the CX or the service design team. So that's what we did. We basically appointed customer journey owners for our key customer journeys. So the first ones we mapped out and said, congratulations, you are now responsible for fixing this really big problem. Yeah, a little bit of a bumpy ride for the first customer journey owners here. It wasn't a super fun job to start out with. They get this huge responsibility, but they basically gave them a sledgehammer, right? Try to go down, break down the silos between all these departments. And they couldn't really use the sledgehammer, so what they did instead was they started to almost go around like beggars with their hands out saying, please, can you help me fix this problem? You guys with the IT budgets, please, can you help me fix this and fix this and fix this? So they were begging, negotiating, having a bit of a hard time in the beginning. But slowly we started to sort of evolve this role. We started giving them employees, for example, to help them push, help them convince people in the organization to buy into this. We also gave them an IT budget in the end, because instead of going around begging, maybe you just decide what the money is actually spent on. And that's when we really started to see things come alive. Of course, that's the wrong way. Of course, when you also assign someone, you need to show that it's actually adding value. Right now we have people hired to do a job. That person needs the KPI, otherwise we don't know if they're doing well. At least that's how we do it in the corporate world, right? So we looked at what are indicators that this is actually working. We had some indicators at the strategic level, all of you probably have. Quarterly relationship surveys going out with feedback from customers. We had competitor benchmarks going on every 6 months as well to see how we were performing with that. But it's kind of high-flying, high level. Couldn't really pinpoint whether or not the specific update we did in the onboarding journey or the home buying journey was affecting the full result. Then we also had some really operational KPIs where we're looking into. So after calls to the call center, after each meeting, we were getting feedback. And here we could get a little closer, like we could measure on the specific meeting going on in the home journey. And what we looked at when we looked at that, so they were actually really happy. They were super happy in this specific interaction. And then the thought in the organization, if they're happy, then should we do something? They seem to be pretty satisfied. What we found out was that it's actually a bit misleading. So they were super happy with our interactions, but when we talked to them after finishing the journey, they were super unhappy. So we figured out we needed to measure something that went end to end. So we started doing end-to-end measurements basically. One of them was having what we call an end journey survey. So basically at a certain trigger point at the end, when they fulfill their need, we would ask them to reflect back on the entire journey. What do you think about the initial part? What do you think about it now when you're actually done? And then we combined it with the touchpoint measures to sort of give a more balanced view on how our customers actually experiencing this. We also measured on a few other things. I'm going to go more into depth with that a little bit later. And what we can see, setting up these measures, it was starting to work. So someone was actually continuously pushing this. We were starting to improve the customer journeys, and they thought, okay, how can we capitalize on that? Now we have our first few journeys that are starting to be staffed. They're starting to work like this. How can we scale it? And we thought, let's take this toolbox and spread it out across the organization. If our little team has to do all the work, we'll never get done because we have personal banking and business banking and large corporate banking, and within that we have maybe 5 to 10 journeys in each of those segments. We have 4 countries with variations in each. If we have to map them and design them all ourselves, we'll never be done. So we basically designed a process, a standard way of working with customer journeys. We designed a toolbox, and then we took 1,000 employees that worked with development, and we sent them on a 2-day boot camp. Basically, I was flying around to the different countries and teaching them, this is what a customer journey is, this is how you work with it, this is how you design it and maintain it. Lots of fun, and then we just set it to work and everything works, right? No, not really. Of course, there's a phase 3 as well. Because even though we've given them the tools, even though we now have people focusing on it, working on it full time, it still wasn't going fast enough. So basically it was taking us too long to get from actual insights, there's something wrong with our customer journey, there's a problem, to fixing it. It was taking years to go through that process, and we couldn't really live with that. There was still too many conflicts of interest between different departments, and we were sitting in these yearly prioritization meetings with IT and business, and everyone was just fighting for the same resources to get things done. So we figured out, if we really want to do something about it, we need to do something completely different. And that's where we get to the last phase, which is the revolution. Basically, in Danskebank, we went all in on this. We went all the way. We figured out if we wanted to fix this, we had to fundamentally change the way we were working with development in the organization. And timing was super, super lucky. We were able to jump on, I call it the agile wave that was about to hit the organization in around 2019. What happened was we got a new CEO. He came from a Dutch bank where he'd just done an agile transformation down there. And now he wanted to do the same thing in Danskebank. So luckily enough, we teamed up with the agile transformation there. And at the start of 2020, right before, I don't know if you remember, COVID hit, everyone was sent home to work from their home offices. We decided in all our brilliance this is the time we're going to do a full company-wide transformation of our development department. Basically, we redesigned our entire development organization of 6,000 people, and we went from a product-focused organization to a journey-focused organization. So what we did was we created 15 what we call customer journey tribes with between 80 and 150 people in each. Besides that, we also have a few extra tribes, some around channels, so the channels that customer sees, and a few enabler tribes. But really the focus was on enabling the end-to-end customer journey. We gave them full ownership of the customer journey, end-to-end, front to back. So that means they own everything. They own the applications, they own the processes. Even if we give them ownership of some of the products within. And then we gave these tribes everything they needed to actually deliver on it. We gave them IT developers, designers, business developers, IT architects, scrum masters, product owners, process people, risk people, go-to-market, whatever, you name it, in order to actually deliver on this. Each tribe was seen as a long-term investment, and everyone was hired full-time into this tribe. They weren't working on anything else except this specific customer journey. And each were given a long-term horizon, so 3 to 5 years, knowing that there would be stability to actually work on this for the longer term. It was a radical shift in the way we were actually working. Now, actually making this change was... let's go back. So, yeah, making this change was also really radical for the organization. Basically, we were asking every one of these 6,000 people to reapply for their own job, or maybe their existing job didn't even exist in the new organization. So we asked them to pick, where do you want to work in this new organization, because in a couple of months, this old one isn't going to work. Basically, we went in 12 months from drawing on a whiteboard to having people actually sitting, working in this new setting, all while COVID was going on, and we were out of office, then back in office, then out of office again, and then finally back. It was quite a crazy ride. And as you can probably imagine, throwing the entire development organization into this kind of change also ruffled some feathers. A lot of employees were getting new jobs. Some also left, let's be honest about that. It was a big change. So at the end, we were sitting with these tribes exactly like we wanted them, but we were also sitting with a lot of new people and a lot of new chairs. So what we decided to do was basically help them out from the get-go. We weren't going to make the same mistakes as in the past and expecting them to just pick it up and run. So we set up a number of acceleration teams to help them in their new setup. And what these acceleration teams were basically CX people, service designers, coupled with process consultants that are good at mapping processes, and IT architects that are really good at mapping system landscapes. And we sent them in to basically help each of the different journeys get an overview of what is it that you now have ownership over. So we mapped the as-is in sort of a service blueprint format, mapping the customer journey, mapping the process landscape, mapping the IT landscape underneath, and then pinpointing all the key pain points across all of those layers. Then we help them set up a long-term vision for the journey. Where is it that you actually want to be in 5 years' time? And then we help them break that down into initiatives to actually get there in a value prioritized backlog, starting with the things that could add the most value right now for the customer, also for the bank. And then we further broke that down into 18 months roadmaps to ensure that you know exactly what you need to be doing in the near future to add the most value. Part of this exercise was also being quite specific on what actually adds value in this journey and what doesn't. So we also delivered a quite detailed cost out potentials for each of the initiatives. How much cost can we actually take out of our processes, which is of course something top management super interested in as well. And then a key part of us was when we were leaving these tribes, they needed to be able to do exactly what we've just done in the future. So we were teaching them as we went along as well, showing them the tools, showing them why it's important, and showing them how they could do it themselves after we had left. Basically plowing through all these 15 tribes took, I think, 1.5 years, something like that, to set them up. But it was a huge effort, but also extremely valuable for these new tribes starting out their new life. With this huge change, we also realized, well, the KPIs need to adapt to that. Luckily, now we have people working on this full time. We could actually tie the performance of the customer journey to the performance of the tribe, and specifically the leadership team within that tribe. That was a huge game changer. Now the challenge was finding the right balance between KPIs, so you can't end up basically gaming them. That was something we've seen in the past. When you get too specific with the KPIs, people have a tendency, especially if you tie it to bonuses, to start gaming the system. If you're measured on cost to serve, then you just lower the cost as much as possible. And then if you're not measured on customer experience, then who cares, right? Or vice versa. If you're measured on customer experience but not cost to serve, then you just start hiring more people to give a really good experience. So we tried to find a balance between different aspects, requiring them to both measure on perception, actual behavior, so how are customers interacting with our services, what are they actually doing, what's the conversion rates look like, how many are we actually getting through our online channels versus having to manually handle, and then also looking at internal performance. So we need to continuously improve our cost to serve, how long it actually takes for customers to get through, that kind of thing. So we're kind of triangulating success. And then we also required them to look both end-to-end for some measures and at a touchpoint level for others. So we constantly had this balance. Now, the big question you're probably all thinking, was it worth it? Huge effort to do, right? I would love to now actually show you the KPIs that we set up, but as you maybe saw in the beginning, I don't work for Danskebank anymore. I was hired in to Nordea to basically do the same transformation that we've done in Danske, just now in Nordea. What I can say is that Danskebank is definitely back on track. So since we did the transformation in 2020, the stock price has gone up with 300%. Not all of that is attributed to this, but definitely the focused work on improving the journeys and especially improving the efficiency of the journeys has really helped. In the Journey Acceleration Program itself, we were able to identify around 1 billion Danish kroner in savings. So that's around 130 million euros in savings a year by simply taking out waste out of the journeys. And we were doing that without impacting the customer experience, quite the opposite actually. We were keeping all the things that the customers really appreciated, like this meeting with the loan advisors in the home journey. We kept that, and then we just took away all the other bits that weren't adding value to the customer. So yeah, a huge impact on that. what I can also now see when I'm sitting in the chair of the competitor is that Danskebank is quite far ahead on their work with the journey. So in Nordea, we definitely have our work cut out for us. Luckily, I now have the plan for what to actually do. So we're starting basically in the same place. As I said, I'm starting with onboarding. We start small, pick out the key one to really show that this can actually add some value. We definitely found a problem that's worth solving. And then we slowly start showing that this can actually succeed and it adds value as we go along. We're also starting to now appoint owners for some of our key journeys. We're setting up measures that go all the way end to end across the journey. And we're starting to scale the tools and the mindset in the organization. Are we going to build a revolution? Let's see. We're starting small scale now, at least building part of the development around our key customer journeys. We're making sure that there is a budget for these journey teams to actually work both now and in the future. And then we're starting to link KPIs for the customer journeys with actual performance in the employees. Yes, that was what I have for you. Thank you so much.